The moment came without warning. In the middle of what should have been a routine conversation, Jamie Dornan paused, his voice tightening as he mentioned his father's name. There was no dramatic build-up, no prepared speech, just a brief silence that felt heavier than any confession. For many fans, that pause said more than words ever could. What followed was not a polished statement, but something raw and unsettlingly honest. Jamie admitted there was one regret he carried quietly for years, a feeling that never fully faded no matter how successful his life became. It wasn't about fame, missed roles, or choices in his career. It was about time, and how easily people assume there will always be more of it. His father passed away when Jamie was still very young, at an age when most people barely understand permanence. At the time, he could not grasp what that loss would truly mean later in life. Grief arrived early, but understanding arrived much later, creeping in during moments when he wished he could ask a simple question or hear a familiar voice. The absence did not shrink with time, it simply changed shape. As he grew older, that absence became more complicated. Jamie has spoken about moments when he realized there were things he never said, not because of conflict, but because he believed there would be another chance. Like many children, he assumed adulthood would provide space to reconnect, to explain himself, to say thank you in a more meaningful way. That assumption, he admits, is the root of his deepest regret. The regret is not tied to a single dramatic memory. Instead, it lives in small, ordinary moments that never happened. A conversation that was postponed. A question that felt unnecessary at the time. A quiet pride he never verbalized. These fragments linger precisely because they were never completed, leaving behind a sense of unfinished business that success cannot erase. When Jamie talks about this now, there is no bitterness, only clarity. He recognizes that as a child and later as a young man, he did not yet understand how fragile time truly is. He believed growth would naturally come with opportunities to reconnect, to redefine relationships once life settled down. What he did not realize was that life rarely waits for people to be ready. This realization became sharper as his own life accelerated. Fame arrived, responsibilities multiplied, and expectations grew heavier. In public, he was praised for confidence and control, yet privately he carried a quiet awareness that one of the most important relationships in his life had ended before it fully formed. The contrast between public success and private longing made the regret even more pronounced. There is a particular weight in realizing that certain versions of yourself never got to exist. Jamie has hinted that the man he eventually became is someone his father never had the chance to know. Achievements, milestones, and personal growth all came after that loss, creating a parallel life that could never be shared. This, he admits, is the part that still hurts the most. Rather than dramatizing the pain, Jamie speaks about it with restraint, which makes it more powerful. He does not frame himself as a victim of tragedy, but as someone who learned too late that love often goes unspoken because it feels permanent. His regret is not about wrongdoing, but about silence. And silence, once time runs out, becomes irreversible. As he reflected on this, fans noticed something else beneath his words. A warning disguised as a confession. Jamie was not simply revisiting his past, but holding up a mirror for anyone listening. His story quietly asks whether people are postponing conversations they believe can wait. Because sometimes, without any signal or closure, waiting becomes the thing you regret forever. As Jamie's words continued to circulate, something shifted in the way people listened to him. This was no longer just a reflection on childhood loss, but a moment where the past collided with the present. He began speaking less as a son frozen in memory, and more as a father acutely aware of time slipping forward. That change in perspective quietly reshaped the meaning of his regret. Becoming a parent altered the way he understood his own childhood loss. Jamie has hinted that holding his children made him realize how much his father never got to witness. First steps, first words, small routines that slowly build a relationship were moments his father was denied, and moments Jamie himself never experienced from the other side. The realization arrived not with drama, but with a heavy calm that settled in over time. This is where the regret deepened, but also transformed. Jamie no longer spoke about what he missed as a child, but about what he now refuses to miss as a father. He admitted that there are days when he consciously turns down work, not because of burnout, but because he understands how easily presence can be replaced by excuses. Success, he learned, does not compensate for absence. People close to him have quietly noted changes in his priorities over the years. He is said to be more protective of his private life, more deliberate about how he spends his time away from the spotlight. While the industry rewards constant visibility, Jamie has chosen restraint, guided by a personal history that taught him the cost of postponement. This shift is not loud, but it is consistent. What surprised many fans was how deeply they connected to his confession. Messages flooded in from people who had lost parents early, as well as those who suddenly felt an urgency to reach out to theirs. Jamie's regret resonated because it did not feel rehearsed or performative. It sounded like something people often think but rarely say out loud until it is too late. In sharing his story, Jamie unintentionally became a voice for a collective emotion. The comments were not about celebrity admiration, but about unfinished conversations, strained relationships, and the fear of repeating the same mistake. Many listeners recognized themselves in his words, realizing that regret is often born not from conflict, but from assuming time is guaranteed. That assumption, once broken, changes everything. There is also a subtle maturity in how Jamie frames his regret today. He does not romanticize the past or attempt to rewrite it. Instead, he acknowledges that some losses leave permanent marks, but those marks can guide better choices moving forward. His story does not promise healing, only awareness, which makes it feel honest rather than comforting. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of his reflection is that it refuses to offer closure. Jamie has made it clear that regret does not disappear, even with understanding. It becomes something you carry, something that quietly informs how you show up for others. In his case, it has reshaped how he values presence over achievement, connection over ambition. As the conversation drew to a close, there was no dramatic conclusion, no inspirational quote meant to wrap everything neatly. Instead, there was a lingering sense of stillness. Jamie's regret was not shared to seek sympathy, but to acknowledge a truth many people avoid confronting. Time does not announce when it is running out. That is why his story stays with listeners long after the video ends. It leaves people sitting with their own thoughts, wondering which conversations they have delayed and why. Jamie's experience does not demand action, but it quietly invites it. And in that silence, many realize that the most important words are often the ones people believe they can say tomorrow. In quieter moments, Jamie has suggested that regret has a way of sharpening gratitude. It forces him to notice the ordinary details he once overlooked, the small routines that define real connection. He no longer assumes these moments will repeat themselves endlessly. Each one is treated as something that deserves full attention. There is also an unspoken strength in the way he allows vulnerability to exist without explanation. Jamie does not justify his feelings or soften them for comfort. By leaving them exposed and unresolved, he gives others permission to feel their own without shame. That honesty is what makes the story linger rather than fade. Ultimately, his regret is not presented as a wound to be healed, but as a compass. It points him toward presence, patience, and intention in a world that rewards distraction. And perhaps that is why his words resonate so deeply. They remind people that love is not proven in grand gestures, but in showing up before time decides otherwise.